Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Glenn has held his doctorate in psychology for more than 30 years and is also a former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leave the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Now, before we get started, if you haven't yet downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
Hey, it's the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston with defeatyourcravings.com. And I'm here with a kind-hearted woman named Sarah, who has agreed to share this session with you so you can benefit from her experience and strength and hope and wisdom, as well as her trials and tribulations and stumbles and falls. Right, Sarah?
Right.
If you would, just give me a little history of what you're struggling with, and then tell me how I could help you, and we'll do our best.
Great. Oh, a history. How do I make this brief? Well, I feel like I have been really into fitness, and I called it nutrition for a while. Really, it was just thinness. And I spent a good probably decade of my life just really restricting as much as I could, training as much as I could, trying to hit a particular look or body composition or whatever like that. So that was before kids, and that was really fine and easy to maintain. But 2 kids came along and was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder and just wasn't able to keep up with the things that I was doing before, and just kids threw a whole lot of other factors into play as well. And so I've kind of just been, I would say definitely yo-yoing is a really good term for that for the last probably 6 years, 5 or 6 years, just in real intense yo-yo, where I'd spend a ton of mental energy trying to hit these goals that I had before, trying to track my food, trying to over-exercise still, but then would end up obviously like binging. I would say I'm more of an emotional eater than necessarily a binge eater, although I do have definite binges that are thrown in there probably like several times a year, but mostly it's the emotional eating piece where that's something that I can actually trace way back to thinking about childhood. I would kind of like entertain myself by making food and sitting in front of the TV. And I remember a lot of comfort being wrapped up in that. And so that's kind of what I can see myself getting into now at this phase of my life where 2 kids and working and things like that, I just am emotionally and physically drained pretty often. And so food is always my go-to for that, even when my rational brain is like, okay, you're going to suffer significantly more if you use food to soothe. But all my best tips and tricks for keeping myself on track and moderate are just not working anymore.
Gotcha. So you have just 2 kids?
Yes.
And how old are they?
They are 5 and 6. And it doesn't feel like just, it feels like 2 feels plenty. So I have so much admiration for people who have more than 2 because it feels like plenty.
Sarah, I don't have any kids. So. I was a child and a family psychologist by training, so I had a large practice when I was in my 30s. So I know what it's like to have kids, but it never worked out for me because my ex-wife was traveling. Okay. By about how much did you go up and down?
Solidly 10 to 12 pounds. So I gain and lose the same 10 to 12 pounds over and over and over. And most recently, just with the emotional eating component, I had lost the 10 pounds and then gained 10 pounds back in 2 months. And for me, it's just like, I know it's consistently kind of like fighting probably where the set rate of my body wants to be, but it's just a continual yo-yo piece. But I can tell the neural habits are really wired to seek like everything from food.
When you say that your tips and tricks, your best tips and tricks are not working anymore, could you expand on that a little bit?
Over the time, I'm a counselor. And so I've done a lot of, just learning about body positivity and moderation, intuitive eating, like all the things. Like I'm very, very well researched into stuff like that. So I have that kind of mindset of like, okay, here's the things I know are important. Your body image is not everything. So like the mentality side of things, just talking myself through the fact that I'm more than being thin. And at the same time, knowing, okay, if I do have goals that I want to hit, then maybe tracking macros and having limits and eating whole foods and doing all the things to try to fuel my body well without just restricting. And so all my tools and tips and tricks are kind of a variety of both mental and actual tracking of macronutrients and things to fuel.
But you said it's not working anymore. What's breaking down? Where's the pain?
Just the emotional eating component. Like if I could just do what I know to do, which is be kind to my body, fuel my body well, everything, I think I would be able to reach my goals. But the things that are getting in the way right now is that emotional eating component. I could be great all day, and at the end of the day, I just start picking and snacking, and then it can just be like out of control real fast.
Okay. So it used to be that your mindfulness and intuitive eating and body positivity could get you through the day and you could stick with what you were doing to get the weight off on the down cycle. But lately that's not working because of a level of stress and caretaking and nurturing you have to do between your patients and your kids.
Yeah, I think so.
Let's talk about what you want to do. Have you read the book?
Yes, I've listened to the book. I have it on Audible, so I've done it at least once and kind of back through it.
That counts. Do you have a food plan that you're trying to hit? Or are you waiting until we talk?
I've gone through just really interesting awarenesses with this. So the food plan that I just really do want to hit is that whatever my macros are set to and whatever I have pre-planned to eat, I want to just stick with that. That's my number one. Like I don't eat anything that's not in my plan. And then the second one is that I just don't pick. I don't take bites of things.
Does that mean you don't eat between meals or?
Yeah, I guess that's a more basic one. So for example, like my biggest traps right now are like my girls will have cereal in the morning and, you know, they won't finish the whole bowl. So I'm like, oh yeah, like that looks really good. So I'll just take a couple bites of their cereal before I toss it out. Or like at the end of the night, oh, they have a couple crackers left in their lunchbox. I'll just grab those. It's little bits that doesn't seem like a big deal. In the past, I have been so restrictive and rigid on that. There's a part of me that really pulled away from that. But I think that rigidity, and as terrible as it sounds, that anxiety around I have to be thin because it is what's good about me, that really drove me. And that really made it really easy to just stick with my plan because, you know, I had to. It was like survival. But now that I'm more settled in my life, my husband and I are in a great spot with our marriage. I don't have that pressure anymore to just like really push myself beyond like, oh, this is very pleasurable when I eat this.
So you were pathologically driven to be thin and you don't really have that motivation anymore, but you'd like to be thin anyway.
Yes. I'm a fitness instructor. And so I would like to be able to teach my class without a lot of hardship. And I would like to just fit into my clothes. So thin is I don't know whether it's thin or not, but yes, there still is a drive somewhat with that.
You'd like to be fit.
Yes. Fit is a better term.
I'm still trying to zero in on the rules that you want. I agree you want a balanced set of rules that don't restrict you too much and don't make you too obsessed, but yet give you protection.
Yeah.
You're saying not picking, but it's a little bit of an ambiguous definition. Some things that people do is they might say, I only eat sitting down at a table with food on my plate.
Yes, my struggle with that, I've been trying to move into that, but I think just the flow of our lives right now and kind of the way that I feel like I most naturally enjoy to eat is just little bits all day long. Instead of like 3 big meals, I like to do like breakfast, you know, with a snack in between, or just kind of like flow with my hunger signals. And so it's been hard for me to really sit down and structure. And we are moving so fast that I have to eat on the fly pretty often.
Then if you just stuck to what you planned, then you wouldn't be picking?
Right. If I just stuck to what I planned, I know what it is, but I can kind of be flexible with when and how I eat it. Yeah, it's the anything off my daily macro plan.
When do you do your planning?
The night before.
Okay. And when you say a macro plan, can you choose, like if you have 50 grams of carbs or something, can you choose those carbs from a number of different options over the course of the day?
Yes.
So then you could pick. You could say, well, these crackers that my girls left over are part of my macros, right?
Yes, as long as they were, I think, pre-planned. It wouldn't be an on-the-fly thing.
That's what I'm trying to get at. When you write down your plan, you'll say, I'm going to have 50 grams of brown rice.
Yes.
Okay, so there's no substitution over the course of the day.
There can be substitution, yeah, but it has to fit in there.
What if your pig says crackers are like brown rice? Even though I wrote down brown rice, I think I'll have the crackers.
It says that all the time. And so then it'll talk me into that and I'll be like, okay, cool. Well, I can just sub that out. And then of course that means you get 3 crackers for the giant pile of brown rice. And then the 3 crackers are never enough. But then, it causes so much pleasure that my pig's like, let's go. And then I just eat tons of crackers.
Do you want to have a rule that you only eat whole foods? How would you protect yourself from the crackers?
This is actually helpful to be talking this out with you because I can see how complex that maybe I need to simplify things. I want to aim towards whole foods, but I do want to allow a little bit of flexibility in my life if things come up. I just want to be able to have limits to say, once I've reached the amount of food that I know is good for my body, I can stop.
Okay. So you have a guideline to eat whole foods, but that's not a rule.
Yes.
You can make exceptions. So it's still not clear to me within your rules, where is the boundary that's going to protect you from picking? If you can make substitutions at will, I know someone who allowed substitutions and discovered that he would plan out some fish, and eventually his pig convinced him that cake was like fish.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think, and I've been at this long enough, and with the autoimmune condition, I'm very well tuned into the fact that cake makes me feel like shit, whereas fish makes me feel good. So I'm a little motivated by that, thankfully, but it really is just the limits. I think it's just knowing that just because this tastes good does not mean I need to keep doing it, if that makes sense. There'd be so much more simplicity if I could just be like, dude, just stick with the freaking plan. That's it.
Sounds like you want to allow some processed food. Where's that boundary, though? What role do you want the processed foods to play in your life?
Oh, man. I mean, the biggest things for me right now are I have a couple foods that I want to call them treats or something like that. Maybe the processed things are actually, that might be a really good one, in the morning and in the evening. I work out really early in the morning. So my pre-workout is kind of some processed, quick, easy things. And then my evening last little dessert could be processed. So maybe structuring times of the day and then sticking with whole foods in between. Because I know when I have just gone really hardcore, I've tried to do autoimmune protocol diets and I've just lost my mind because it was so just not satisfying.
So how would we word that? If we'd say the only times I may have processed foods are when?
First thing in the morning and last thing at night, the ones that are planned.
What role do you want your kids' leftovers to play in your life?
I just don't want to touch them. There's really no reason that I need to be touching any of that. I mean, it's funny to hear it back. I'm like, that sounds gross, actually. Just don't do it. Just don't touch them.
You're not the only one who struggles with that. Please don't feel ashamed. It sounds like you need a rule for that. Okay. So what if you had the following 4 rules? I want you to just take a breath and let it flow over you and tell me what's good about it, anything you need to change. You stick to the macros that you planned and wrote down. You always write them down the night before. The only time that you have processed foods are first thing in the morning and last thing at night, and they have to be planned, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that you never touch your kids' foods.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that would derail a lot of my off-ramps for sure.
If you did those 4 things, how could your pig get you into trouble?
Oh, there's several things I've been aware of recently, but because of the rigidity before, because I know that I really kept myself, it was so important to just stick with these over everything, that now my pig's like, well, you're being rigid, or you deserve, the you deserve is oof, that's been in there big lately.
Those are things your pig could say to try to get you to break these rules. But what might you eat that you would feel less than proud of within these 4 rules? If you could comply with them 100%, and if I could help you to deal with the pig's attacks, if you had these 4 rules in place, are you protected?
Are you saying are there danger foods in there?
Is there anything else that you do with food that's really unhealthy that gets you in trouble that wouldn't be covered by these 4 rules?
I don't think so. The only thing would be like on random occasions, for example, like drinking alcohol. I don't drink probably more than maybe once a month usually, but like have been dabbling with the idea of like, am I like missing out on something if I just had like moderate amounts of alcohol? Yeah, just wondering about some random outings, social outings with alcohol.
And what role would you like that to play in your life? Where would the boundaries be there?
I would like to always be with people. Alcohol is something that is, let me think of how to articulate this. Because I don't drink very much, when I do drink, I tend to go overboard because it's like, yeah, let's go. And then it ends up being terrible. And I end up obviously eating a lot as a result of that. So I would like alcohol to just be more moderate.
What's moderate? A glass, 2 glasses?
1 to 2 drinks.
Okay. So if you never drink alone and never more than 2 drinks?
Yes. But then I think my bigger problem is not really the alcohol. It's the food after. It always drives me to go wild.
I don't know what you weigh, but most women, particularly smaller women, will tell me that they can't keep to their food rules after more than 1 drink.
Right. Yes, that is highly accurate.
Would you feel enough freedom to be able to have a drink when you were out socializing?
I could definitely try it. Once I kind of get that little buzz, I've never been able to just be like, okay, let's just stop. But it's also because I rarely do it. So it feels kind of like, this is just this one time, so I better just go nuts. It sounds weird to say like, maybe I should drink more often. If I just kind of allowed myself to flow with it and I knew there would be another opportunity one of these days, that maybe it wouldn't be like, hey, I have to have like 3 or 4 of these because this is the only time I'm going to do it in the next 3 months.
If you didn't feel guilty about having a drink when you were out with friends or your husband or something like that, then you could be satisfied with 1?
Yes, that's the theory.
And you drank a little more often?
Yes.
Could you do that?
Yeah, I don't think that would be hard. And that's interestingly like kind of has been one of my goals with like moving away from the restriction. You know, I'm in such a pendulum swing with it. The restriction used to keep me really out of social things because I was afraid I wouldn't be able to hit my numbers or I drink too much or whatever. And now I'm like, okay, I want to be able to still hit my goals and enjoy time out with people, not have fear around what I'm going to eat.
That's the idea.
More might be the way to do that more often.
Okay. So what we're coming to is you stick to your pre-planned macros written down the night before, that you don't touch your kids' food and you don't drink alone. And you go out as often as you want to and have 1 drink. And the only time you allow processed food is in the first thing in the morning and last thing at night. Mm-hmm. How does that feel?
I mean, that feels really free, but also structured enough. I really get a lot from hitting goals. So, you know, I feel good about myself and it feels structured enough that I could really feel like I'm moving towards something. The only thing that does seem like it would be a little unlikely is that if I'm having processed foods at night and allowing myself to drink more often. But I guess I would have to be pre-planned. So, ooh, yeah, that sounds doable.
So you're a little concerned that if you're having processed foods at night and drinking more often, that you might not hit your fitness goals?
Just that I might not be able to stick with my limits. Again, if I stayed with what was pre-planned and hit my numbers and had 1 drink, I mean, I think I really would hit my fitness goals.
What if you didn't eat processed foods when you were drinking?
Yeah, that would be good.
So you modify the processed food rule to say the only time I can have processed foods are first thing in the morning and last thing at night, but not if I'm drinking.
Yes. You know, my body does feel more junky when I have alcohol in it, but then if I allowed myself to put whole food in it, then it would probably do the trick without sending me on a binge.
Yeah. So you can still have processed foods, you can still have alcohol, just not at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I want you to imagine that you can actually follow this plan for a whole year. And you and I have a follow-up call, and you come back and you say, Glenn, I can't believe it. I actually did it. And you won't believe what's better and different in my life. Tell me about your life in a year when things are so much better and different in a believable way because you followed these rules to a T.
It actually makes me emotional thinking about that because I feel like that's just really something that I've wanted to hit for a long time. So what I envision with that is that it's like suddenly, finally, that balance in the middle of being able to have goals, take care of my body, still lead fitness classes and do the things that I enjoy doing, feel comfortable in my body, but then also really open up to more fun and just more ability to connect with both my husband and friends and things without rationalizing to myself that I'm just being healthy when I'm really not necessarily. So yeah, it just seems like I would have so much more like fun in life and probably less of a need to honestly like binge because I have more like joy than I have before.
That's so interesting. Can you dimensionalize that for me? What would I see if I were to observe you and your husband or you and your friends a year from now as opposed to today?
Well, we would be out and about with friends because we're not very often, which I've always blamed on like, well, it's the kids. I'm like, well, maybe it's me. Actually, it's not the kids. I just feel like maybe seeing more confidence in me, more joy in me, because one of my biggest goals is I work with people so often in counseling, but really struggle to apply to myself. The cool things about you have nothing to do with your body weight or what it looks like. And so the cool things about me, like my ability to just be fun and be out and about and engaging and care about people and connect with people, would be so much more prominent because I would be living in more joy than just the constant distraction that trying to hit goals and not hitting goals is for me. Like the amount of brain energy that I use, trying to control my food, but then still sabotaging myself is just ridiculous. So it would really free up more brain space to just look happier and be happier. And yeah, it just sounds a lot more fun.
Your food and your weight would essentially become a non-issue and all the cool things about you could come to the surface.
Yeah, totally. Which just seems like a unicorn dream, but yeah.
Is this believable if you stuck to the rules for 5 years?
Yes. I mean, even just a year, if I could stick to these things, they seem realistic enough, but flexible enough that I could kind of hit all the things that I want to hit. I mean, I'm very much of an introverted person. And so I don't need a ton of out and about social interaction, but even just a little bit more would, I think, really bring a lot of balance to my life.
Okay. Is there anything else that would be different and better besides your confidence and lack of food obsession and your exuberance with your husband and your friends?
I just imagine my flexibility in life. I just think my brain power that goes into trying to like structure all this and motivate myself and do all that kind of stuff just really does zap my energy and zaps my focus. So that takes away from my kids. That takes away from my present awareness. Life is really, really, really good right now, but the amount of times I can get myself into just like negative emotions because I didn't hit a goal or something, I feel like it would just bring a lot more joy and peace to the home in general.
Gotcha. Okay. I want to ask you an uncomfortable question. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but it would be helpful if you're comfortable with it.
Sure.
What happens in 5 years if you allow the pig to keep making you obsessed with your weight going up and down and living the way that you were living? Like if you don't do anything about it and you just keep allowing yourself to yo-yo like that, what's going to happen in 5 years?
Whether it's chicken or the egg, I don't exactly know what turned on the autoimmune disorder, but I would imagine that consistent overtraining, undereating, and yo-yoing really did not help the fact that I had autoimmune genetics. So I anticipate my just overall health in 5 years would really be suffering as a result of not finding that balance and just as a result of just the stress, the internalized stress that comes with just having a goal, but not aligning my actions towards it. But then also I've tried a couple times to be like, okay, well, just let go of your goal then, geez. But that doesn't work either. So I think everything would get significantly worse. And right now, what's really driving me to try different things is it's just a really bad feeling to be out of control with food. Like a really bad feeling where I just will stand there. I struggled this weekend too, after all of this mindset stuff and just sitting there kind of like watching myself and being like, what are you doing? But also feeling so terrible because I don't feel like I can stop. Like I feel very disempowered. And so I just imagine that would increase so much more. And when my confidence drops and that starts to turn into shame towards myself, it's just interesting how that kind of warps my thinking about everything. It makes me less effective with my kids, less effective with my husband. I don't show up well at work. Just nothing works as good in my life when I'm internalizing shame. So I imagine by that 5 years, if this were to continue, that would be really good. And I really have enjoyed being a fitness instructor. And I don't go too crazy with it, but I imagine I would have to move away from that because If my body weight continued to increase or yo-yo, I don't think I would be able to maintain something that's been a really big joy for me.
Beautiful job articulating the Ghost of Christmas Future. Really, it is when you feel out of control with food. It's kind of the antithesis of self-actualization. It feels like there's no space between stimulus and response, and that's where you live.
And it's such an icky feeling to be fighting yourself on it, to be trying every day to like set these goals, like you can do it. And that's been a big shift for me lately in the self-trust of saying like, okay, I am determined enough that if I set a goal for myself, I'm going to stick with it. But just constantly day after day after day, setting that goal and then having my behavior not align with it has been a really big dip in my self-trust. And I really miss that ability to be able to just set a goal, stick to it.
Do you think there'll be a difference in your self-esteem and your confidence and your joy in 30 days?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. If I can just get wired, what I know about habits and neural networks, when I can just wire something different and I can wire the benefit again that I get from sticking to a goal, like whatever the goal is, but just the benefit I'll feel in my body, the benefit I would feel with just sticking with a goal, even in 30 days would be significant. And then sometimes I feel like I just turn into this freight train. Then once I'm on my goal, I'm just powering towards it.
Yeah. There'll be no stopping you once you get on a reasonable plan. Would you like to commit to this plan? Does it feel right?
Mm-hmm.
Just take a breath and let me know for sure.
Yes, it feels really good. I'm excited about that because it also, like I said, the things that have kept me away from it was like, oh, like my goals in life now are, I want to go out more. I want to be more free, but everything was so restrictive before. But I feel like we've built in some things that do protect for that and do kind of honor my goals that are moving away from just rigidity in what I'm eating to like, okay.
It's a well-articulated plan of disciplined freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So why does your pig say that you can't or won't or shouldn't do this?
Definitely just that I haven't been able to in the past, for sure. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I've never let myself, I guess, with especially the alcohol, never let myself drink and then try to be moderate. I've never let myself go out more often. I've always just kind of kept myself so structured because that was safe. So I've never done this part before. And then just recently, no matter what I've done to try to like reset, okay, stick with the goal, reset, stick with the goal, reset. I've just done it over and over so many times and I've just struggled in those impulsive moments. And then the other thing, the issue with my autoimmune is that I just struggle with really intense fatigue. And so it feels like sometimes in those fatigue moments, especially at night, I'm just powerless against it. And so that's definitely what it's kind of saying. Or again, that I deserve it. You deserve it. It's okay. Just a little bit. It's not going to be that big of a deal.
Okay, I'm writing these all down. Anything else?
Oh, there were like 4 that I identified this weekend. I think those are most of them. Yeah, like just a little bit is not that big of a deal. You don't want to miss out on your life by being so rigid.
Anything else?
I think that's about it.
Let's go through these one by one. And I want you to remember that the pig wins with a half-truth and a bigger lie. So I want you to identify the lies in what the pig is saying. It's okay to acknowledge the truth, but where's the bigger lie? When the pig says you couldn't in the past, therefore you can't do it now. What's the problem with that?
I have not been doing it. That is kind of the half-truth that I have really been struggling to stay on track. But then the bigger untruth is that I can't.
Well, the pig says you couldn't, so you can't.
Right. So then the truth is that I can like restart and I can just take it moment by moment and stick to what I've planned because I know the long-term benefit will be greater than the instant gratification.
The pig wants to phrase it that you couldn't, so you can't. But the truth is that in all human learning, you can't until you can. I mean, some things take longer and some things might take decades before you kind of dial it all in. But you can remake yourself at any point. And if you're determined to become a person who can, then you can. It's kind of like that old, sounds a little cliche, but if you think you can't or you think you can, then you're right. So if you decide that you're someone who can, who's becoming a person who can, then you will. And that's how kids learn how to walk. That's how they learn how to use the potty. That's how we learn language. That's how we learn mathematics in school and all those different things. You can't until you can. Mm-hmm. Nothing you've done to this point to reset has worked. Therefore, nothing ever will. What's the problem with that?
The problem is along those similar lines that just because I haven't tried this particular piece yet, I haven't kind of looked at it from this bigger, wider picture, that it hasn't worked in the past. And I have kind of been pendulum swinging back and forth between the two extremes. But just like you were saying, the fact that eventually like the pendulum has to stop in the middle somewhere.
What I found with this particular conflict, where people are very facile with mindful eating and intuitive eating, is that, on the one extreme, there's this idea that rules are bad and any restriction, even a mental restriction, is going to cause a binge, which is true to a certain extent. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't articulate your bullseye. Be really clear about where it is so you can learn from if you make a mistake.
Yeah. And honestly, I think I binge more with less rules and restrictions. Like I'm just a person who really benefits from structure, really benefits from understanding and hitting rules and goals. And so I really honestly binge way more when I have less structure than when I have more structure.
You need the right structure is the thing. It's like if you put too many traffic lights in town that aren't really necessary, then you're restricting people's freedom. But if you don't put any, there's going to be a lot of car accidents. And so you need to study the situation like we did. We spent a lot of time talking about your places where you're getting in trouble and what you wanted to accomplish and what felt too restrictive and what felt just right. And we put the stoplights and the stop signs in just the right places. And you still might adjust it as you go along. We're not using the stoplights and the stop signs in an overly restricted way. We're using it to kind of maximize your freedom wherever we can without really putting you at risk.
Yeah, I really like that.
Pig says you're very stressed and you get very fatigued at the end of the day and you won't have any willpower to resist. What's the problem with that?
I was re-listening to the book and just talking about the fact that there are a million other things that I could be doing when I get fatigued that I'm not doing. So in fact, even when I am stressed and fatigued, I do still have the willpower to make the decisions that are in line with my goals, especially as I'm thinking towards my future self, benefiting more than my present.
That's all true. You do. But the other thing is that the purpose of making your decisions beforehand is because it is harder to make decisions at night. That's why we have these rules in place so that you don't need willpower. When I say I'll never have chocolate during the week, that I don't have to decide during the week. I don't need willpower.
Totally.
You have to go through an extinction curve, so you're going to have some cravings, right? But if you've made your decisions beforehand, and by the way, when you're entering a new extinction curve, it's also really helpful to supercharge your self-care for the next month or so. Give yourself that extra half hour of sleep and a little bit of extra water. And, I don't know what your detox routine is, but if you like meditation or yoga or getting outside for a little bit, if you can work it out to do just a little more, just a couple of extra minutes a day, stepping out of the rat race, all those things make a difference. You really only have to do the first 30, 45 days like that, and then it gets a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely.
What about when the pig says you deserve it? You definitely deserve it. You deserve a treat.
That's one of, I think, the hardest ones right now because I'm like, yes, I do. And I just feel such a dopamine kick lately from just those dumb little snacky things. So that's one of my more challenging ones for sure. But I think just reminding that what I deserve is to not be like fighting myself all the time. And that's going to be way more beneficial in the long run than just continuing to like drive myself into this cycle.
And you deserve to teach fitness classes with confidence. You deserve to have joy with your husband and your friends and to go out and enjoy socializing and a little bit of drinking without worrying. And you deserve to be able to enjoy the processed food that you're planning in the morning and the night. You deserve to feel confident in yourself. Insert that space between stimulus and response and accomplish what you want to, what Sarah wants to accomplish.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I've really noticed once I get on track too is it is much easier to really enjoy the whole food things that I do eat. I can have pleasure from the food that also benefits me. But it's like you have to separate enough from the instant gratification dopamine drive to really be able to say like, okay, I can do this mindfully and I can really still get pleasure from this, just also within the plan that I'm making.
If you know you're going to stop at the red lights, then you can enjoy the drive.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know you're going to stop at the lights, then it's terrifying the whole way. Do you know that old joke? This guy goes out with a friend, and the friend comes up to a red light, and he speeds through it as fast as he can, and the guy is gripping onto his seat as hard as he can. He says, "What are you doing?" And the guy says, "It's okay, my brother drives like that."
Right.
Goes through another light, and the same thing happens. "It's okay, my brother drives like that." And then he comes to a green light and it comes to a screeching stop. And the guy says, "What the heck are you doing?" And he says, "Well, my brother could be coming the other way." It's just not a way to live. We need those lights and yield signs and stop signs.
Yes, totally.
You can daydream while you're driving and enjoy yourself. Just a little doesn't matter.
Just the reminder that my brain is not going to stop. Like a little is going to turn into a lot, and it never is just a little bit. All the time I'm wiring habits and I'm wiring statements to myself that even like those tiny little decisions do matter.
Exactly. And if you give the pig an inch, it's going to take a mile, right?
Every time.
Yeah. Even a little could turn into a soul-destroying episode.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing your pig says was, you don't want to miss out on your life by being rigid. What's wrong with that?
That I am missing out on my life more by feeling out of control, feeling obsessed with having goals, not hitting them, all of those kind of things. I'm missing out on what's happening beautifully in my life right now because I'm struggling with, my clothes not fitting and this constant battle and fight against this shame. This kind of plan will really allow me to actually open up way more and be able to have all the things that I want, but within moderation.
Beautiful. So how confident are you that you're always going to pre-plan your food and stick to your macros, exactly what you planned the next day, that you're never going to drink alone and only one drink when you do, that you're not going to touch your kids' food, and the only processed food you're going to have is in the morning, first thing in the morning and just before bed, except when you're drinking? How confident are you you're going to do all that?
I feel really excited about it. Again, with the idea that like there's no big pull away from it. Like this encompasses everything that I've been wanting and working towards. Like I'm feeling really excited about it. And also the discussion of the extinction curve is really helpful too, is just knowing, okay, like it's probably my thoughts and habits and pig squeals are going to turn up way more. But even through that, I can stay on track. So I'm feeling confident and excited.
Is there any reason left that you feel less than 100% confident that you can do this?
I think just the awareness of my humanity and just the fact that I know that there might be bumps, but I guess I just feel also okay to say, like, if that happens, I just want to get right back on track. There's probably like 90% confidence that, I'm just going to go and just rock this. And then there's that 10% that says like, well, you are definitely human. But again, just with that overall balance just helps me feel really confident that I'll just get right back on it because I'm really sick of where I am right now.
That's a really healthy attitude, really healthy way to look at it. There's a slight adjustment that I've found to be extraordinarily helpful over the years, which is counterintuitive, which is that even though it's probably true, most people make mistakes along the way, we still have to fix in our mind as we're aiming at the target that it's never going to happen. That's why I say you commit with perfection, but forgive yourself with dignity. So what I like to say, unless there's a very specific squeal, is that it's true that we're only human, and so our pig is always going to have other ideas. But we're 100% confident that we're never going to break these rules again, even though the pig does have other ideas. That little tweak accomplishes the separation at a much deeper level so that you don't leave an opening for the pig to say, well, 1 out of 40 times you're probably going to make a serious mistake. Because if the pig knows that, it gets energized and it wants to get those 40 times over with as quickly as possible.
Right.
So you tell it never. You say, I'm never going to do this again. I'm sick of it. Like they say in those programs, they're sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. Does that make sense, Sarah?
Yeah, it really does. And I think that just those rigid expectations that we are challenging, but then as you said, just not allowing that door to get kicked open for all the other things to come in and derail.
Terrific.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. Now, if you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit DefeatYourCravingsCoaching.com. That's DefeatYourCravingsCoaching.com. Thanks.